Okay, Chris, your turn.
Oh, okay. Here I come.
How are you?
Hey.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, I think the question on everybody's mind is, what's Doug Ford going to do with cannabis in Ontario? So, I was in Moses' office a little over 3 months ago. It was the day that Doug Ford won the leadership of the Conservative Party. And so I was talking to him about my coffee shop, Cannabis and Coffee, 346 Front Street, right by Blue Jays Way and Front Street. So I was telling him I was going to open up this coffee shop, and it was going to be called Cannabis and Coffee. And so I said, oh, Doug Ford just won, the party leadership. I wish I could ask him, what's he going to do with cannabis? Is he going to allow like a small businessman like me to be able to, retail cannabis in the province? So Moses was like, well, why don't you ask him? He's going to be on Libby's show tomorrow morning. I can get you to be the first caller. And so I was like, Moses, you're amazing. I was like, this is incredible. I'm going to talk to Doug Ford. And then Moses says, oh, by the way, I'm doing IdeaCity this year. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That was great last year, I really enjoyed it. He said, oh, and this year we're going to do Cannabis Day. So the second day is going to be all about cannabis. There's going to be some blockchain stuff, but there's going to be a big section for cannabis. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I was like, who are you going to have? And he's like, oh, we're going to have Cam Batley from Aurora. We're going to have, John Fowler from Supreme. I was like, oh, I know John Fowler. I really like John Fowler. He's come to my house. We've had lots of great talks. I was like, that's going to be great. And he's like, oh, I kind of want a disruptor this year. I want somebody that, kind of mix it up, someone, from the outside looking in. And I'm like, oh, well, who are you going to get? Mark or Jody maybe to come and speak, or maybe Dana Larson. And he's like, oh, how about you? I'm like, what? Nobody wants to hear about my treasure hunts and what I used to do. I'm like, I'm trying to open up a coffee shop. And he's like, oh, well, how bad do you want to talk to Doug Ford? So I'm like, no.
Okay, let's go to the phones. We've got Chris in Toronto. Hi, Chris.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, hello, Mr. Ford. I know that you've been a champion for small businesses, and I've heard that you say Ontario is open for business and you want to get rid of the elites that monopolize every business opportunity. If elected, do you plan to do what your party has done in Manitoba and allow small business owners to apply to open retail stores to sell cannabis? Or will you continue to allow Ontario to be run by government monopoly that only benefits a small group of companies run by Liberal Party insiders?
See, I like that. Geez, you should be running for office.
That was great. You didn't even hear the part where he said I should run for office. Okay, so I said, okay. Obviously, I agreed to talk to, come and speak to you today. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I got started. So about 8 years ago, I was living in Vancouver. I had moved there from Toronto. I really liked the lifestyle there. It was very laid back, The cannabis lifestyle was amazing because I'd never really been a drinker, and ever since I discovered cannabis at about 19, I was like, this is so much better than drinking. I don't have any hangovers, I feel great the next day. I'm like, this is so much easier on my system. I was like, I would have rather just gone out, smoked a couple joints with friends, gone out to see a movie, had a good time, it was the greatest thing that I ever found in my life. And my mom used to always tell me, until they realized that I was smoking cannabis, my mom would be like, oh, you were such a good boy yesterday. You were so polite, and you were so courteous. You were the best son. I was like, Mom, that's because I smoked a joint. I was like, you're giving me a complex because I think you must think I'm a terrible son. Every time you tell me what a great son I am, it's always after I smoked a joint. And my parents are very supportive today of being in the business, because it's been 30 years that they've, had to live with, me being a pot-smoking son, and they've really accepted the lifestyle. Really, people don't realize, especially out in Vancouver, the lifestyle is so different out there. When I was out there 8 years ago, you'd see seniors on park benches smoking joints in the morning time. You could walk downtown anywhere and smoke a joint in public, pass a police officer. They'd be like, having a good morning. If you're like, yes, I am. It was like utopia for someone like me. And I lived for like a year a block away from Mark and Jody's Cannabis Culture Store. So I lived right in Gastown, and I used to go every day to, there's an Amsterdam Cafe, a little coffee shop there, and you could go and you could smoke weed in there. You couldn't buy weed in there, but there was lots of places in Vancouver, in the area, all over the place where you could go and find some. But it was a great place to go and talk to people and to be able to start making a social group. And pretty soon I was making friends. We would smoke a few joints and go hiking or biking or go to the beach or, do an activity. It was never just sitting around and smoking weed like the stereotype of a lazy stoner that just sits at home and plays video games and smokes joints. Vancouver advanced to the point that it was like a lifestyle there. So it wasn't, it wasn't like it was here in Toronto. People were very open with it and accepting of it. And, you could go out to Kitsilano Beach or any place that you wanted, and everybody was smoking. And then my mom got cancer, and so I had to come back to Toronto to be close to my parents. And when I moved here, the culture was a lot different. So when I'd go to the vapor lounges and I'd meet people, I'd be like, hey, let's smoke a few joints and go see a movie. And they'd be like, oh, no, I'm just going to stay here in the vapor lounge or, and smoke here. I don't want to go out in public. People mostly smoked at home, and they didn't really go out anywhere. And it was kind of like an underground subculture. So as I'd met people at the different vapor lounges and places that you can go here in Toronto at the time, I'd start telling people, someone should start up a social club, so people could get together and make friends and go out and hiking, biking, movie nights, comedy nights, stuff like that. And so after about 2 months of complaining about it, people were like, oh man, why don't you do something about it? You come and complain about starting up this social club. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. And one girl had said to me, who I'm still friends with today, she's like, oh, there's this website called meetup.com. And so she's like, you can start up a marijuana meetup group. And I was like, that sounds amazing. And she's like, and they give you like a calendar that you can make all the different dates that you can organize different events. You can do like a cooking class one night, a movie night, the next night. So I was like, well, that's great. And everybody, they have it so you can connect with everybody that joins your group. So I was like, okay, it was like $29. So I was like, okay. I paid the $29, and so I was like, I'll make a calendar of events. So I planned something for 30 days straight. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, how many people are gonna show up? I was like, maybe 3-4 people might show up, I'd be able to make a few friends, I was hoping to, that's all I was really hoping at the beginning, was to make a few friends, maybe even a girlfriend. So, I thought maybe 3-4 people might actually show up to these events, possibly 10 people. And I launched it like at midnight before I went to bed on March 20th, 2013. It was like 1 month before April 20th. So I had started, I was like, April 20th, if you don't know, April 20th is 420. It's like, National kind of Pot Day. I was hoping it was going to be July 1st so that we could change Canada Day to Cannabis Day, but it was really crazy because I could have swore that I remember Trudeau saying July 1st, and then like this year Bill Blair's like, I don't know how that rumor started, July 1st, that would be ludicrous for Canada Day to be the launch day, and I'm like, I could have swore I heard something about that. I'm like, anyways, here in Toronto, a bunch of people telling me to do something. Oh yeah, so I launched this meetup site, and I go to bed, and I thought, in the morning time, I wake up and there's like 400 or 500 people that have signed up for like all these cooking classes and growing classes and movie nights that I'd planned. I was like, oh my God, this is really gonna happen. So I had to, I started placing ads on Craigslist and Kijiji right away. So I was like, I needed hosts and hostesses. So I hired like a dozen people to like help be hosts and hostess. So when we'd get together at the Scotiabank Theatre, at Second City, or wherever we were doing a comedy night, or wherever we were doing a movie night, we'd all get together in a group and we'd go to some nearby park and we'd all smoke some weed, and then we would go watch a movie or the comedy show or whatever the event was. And so I was like, okay, I need some hostesses because I can't just have a group of people show up unorganized, and it has to be a leader, and it needs to be, I wanted it to be really social for females. That was really important because I think like female, well, not for that reason, but it's really, you know, females are the best market. You know, ask any licensed producer. I mean, if you ask a guy about, anything about a great place to go or about a great place to get some weed or anything like that, he will say, oh, I got a guy, I'll get it for you and stuff. But females spread the word. So when you have a social club, it was always the females that were the ones that brought their friends to the events. So I realized this early on that it was more going to be 60, 70% females that showed up to these events. You know, guys are lazy and they don't want to show up to events, but females are really looking for something to go out to and make it more social. So it was really great. So I made sure I got lots of friendly hostesses that would be able to make sure that they made females feel comfortable, because the last thing you want to do is just have like 50 guys show up to go to a movie. You want it to be more social than that. So yeah, it was really good. So I hired a bunch of great people and we started putting on like marijuana movie nights, we would trips to the beach, we did trips to Canada's Wonderland, we did go-karts, we did, golf tours, bowling tours, we did like everything you could think of, and it was awesome. And then I started putting on these events, and it kept getting bigger and bigger, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna do like a giant treasure hunt. Like the events that I was doing were fun, but what really brought people out were these treasure hunts that I did where I hid like a certificate in a park or around the city. And the certificate would say, you've won 7 grams or 14 grams or an ounce of weed. So those were the most popular events. So it got on the news, and then I was on like Sun TV, City TV, and they made a big deal of it. They were like, pot at High Park. I don't know if you remember 3-4 years about a marijuana treasure hunt at High Park, but yeah, first year I put like $25,000 in free marijuana that I gave away in prizes, and it was crazy having to hide them all the night before in the middle of the dark in High Park. I put like the certificates like in an Easter egg. And then like it's 3-4 in the morning and there's like people else in the park. I'm like, who are these people? Are people sleeping in the park? It's like zombies walking around. And then I'd run into people and be like, what are you doing here? It's like, I'm getting ready for the treasure hunt tomorrow. I'm like, man, I'm just trying to hide the prizes. Like, don't follow me. It was like, so yeah, it was a lot of fun. People really loved it. The media, not so much, because they didn't really understand. They seemed to think that I was going to hide a lot of pot in the park. I'm not an idiot. I'm like, I wanted it to be safe and friendly, and I didn't want any children to come across any weed or anybody that wasn't there to play the game. So it was always a certificate that you had to find, and then you had to call me to come and claim your prize, and you had to be over 21, and you had to have a medical card. So there was a lot of buffers and things in place, to make sure that only the right people were able to claim prizes. But, the media blows it up into like that I'm going to be hiding actual weed in the park. But so it was crazy because the police showed up and the media showed up and everybody went and found prizes, and like I went home. I mean, I show up to High Park. I'm tired from hiding like hundreds of prizes, and the media's showing up and the police are all there like just in case something happens, and I'm like, ooh, I wonder what's going on here. And I'm like, I'm really tired, I'm going home. And people went and found all the prizes I hid. They called me up, came and collected them over the next couple of weeks. Everything was fine. I don't know what everybody was waiting to see at the park, but it was, I started to get a lot of the people that came to claim those prizes were medical patients. So they started talking to me about, I want to talk to my doctor, I'd like to know if I qualify for a prescription, I got cancer, I got arthritis, I got MS. I'm like, It's heartbreaking stories, and they're like scared to talk to their doctors about getting a prescription. It's like, I've known my doctor for like 30 years. I don't want to tell him that I want to smoke pot. And the ones that even did, the doctors would dissuade them and say, oh, you know, that's not right for you, Martha, you know, stick to these opioids. And yeah, it was really, and they're like, I want to get off this stuff. And it's like, I don't feel myself, you know, it's like, I want to go back to work. And I just want to be able to take, pot works for me. They'd be going to parks looking for it, trying to find it, you know. It's heartbreaking to have someone dying of cancer like tell me that they spend hours a day searching through parks and back lanes to run into people that might be able to find them some medicine. So I was like, okay, I started up a marijuana information bureau to help refer people to see doctors. And I worked with Moses. I started putting commercials on his radio stations and stuff to refer people to Daniel Schechter at the Cannabinoid Clinic there on Eglinton and Yonge. And I brought Daniel Schechter down to the Zoomer Expo last year, and there's 60,000 seniors that come, and we set up booths and told them about a whole bunch of different products, and the doctor came and lectured to them, and yeah, it was absolutely awesome to be able to help people out. So now, 5 years later, before I opened the coffee shop about 3 months ago, we had about 10,000 members in our social club, and we continue to put on cooking classes, ganja yoga classes, all sorts of fun activities. And we think about, since I opened it up about 3 weeks ago or so, we've taken on about another 3,000 new members in our social club. So, you know, it seems that we are growing by like, close to 1,000 people a week, couple hundred new people every day. So that's what I really wanted to talk about here, though, is the opportunity that you all have. So like Doug Ford said, you know, he told me that he wanted to, you know, privatize, you know, the province because he didn't want big business and big government running the province. But what I think is going to happen, it's going to be a mix of, you know, like BC, a mix of private and, you know, government-run retail distribution models. So I think what's going to happen is the LCBO will continue to sell weed at whatever outlets that they set up here in the province, but I think that Doug Ford is going to announce an application process probably in the next few months, probably before the October 17th date of legalization, I'm thinking. So I think he is going to let the private citizens compete with the LCBO and see who wins. And I think that's the fairest model. That's what BC is going for. So all of you here, especially those of you who live in Toronto, have like a unique, amazing opportunity that you're able to capitalize on what's about to happen right now. You're at ground zero of where the worldwide headquarters of cannabis is. Canada is ahead of everybody else, you know, in distributing to Germany, Spain, you know, every other country in Europe and around the world will start getting, you know, cannabis from Canada. And there's going to be so many opportunities for people to be able to open up their own businesses. And you have to stop thinking about, you know, just coffee shops and the old models of distribution. I mean, I don't know what the LCBO is thinking. They're just going to open up a store, you know, and, you know, they open the doors and people will come in and they'll fly off the shelves and stuff. It doesn't quite, you know, work that way. It may at first for a while from the novelty of it, but it's a very competitive business. And especially if you're going to be allowed to compete with the government, you know, you'll be able to do a much better deal than they will be able to do. So what you need to think about is, you know, let's give you some examples like the edibles market. I mean, you have a 1 year to 18-month head start to come up with a great idea to get into the edible business, whether it's, you know, making edibles, packaging edibles, distributing edibles. If you have a restaurant, you should be thinking about infusing food in your restaurant in like 18 months from now, whether the government says people have to bring it to your restaurant or whether you can infuse it for them in the restaurant. I'm not sure, but either way, you should be getting ready for one model that'll come down the pipeline. Stop thinking about, I mean, a coffee shop's a great idea because, you know, people have accepted that model in Amsterdam. So a cannabis coffee shop, you know, like my Cannabis and Coffee seems like a very, you know, decent, you know, normal idea to try to, you know, get people introduced, educated about cannabis and stuff. But if I had a golf course or something like that, really? You'd have the best dispensary in the city if you got a golf course. I mean, you have no idea. 90% of golfers smoke weed. I mean, you're out on the course, you're smoking all day, you're in the perfect environment. I mean, trust me, go to a golf course and there is seniors and everybody vaping on the course. I mean, 4 hours. People used to bring a 2-4 to the golf course. Now they just bring their vape pens. It's completely changed around. So if you opened up a golf course that was a dispensary, you'd have an open air space, because think of this, the government doesn't know where people are gonna smoke weed. You have an open space that they can walk around your golf course. You can set aside part of your golf course for people to walk around and smoke as an area. You know, you have so much land to be able to work with. Another idea is like, you know, people are gonna come here soon, tourists from from the United States, and they're gonna know it's legal and they're gonna wanna buy some and they're gonna wanna enjoy, but there's nowhere for them to smoke. So, you know, the government says you can only smoke at your home. It's ludicrous, it's where your kids are. I thought like they were trying to tell you to keep it away from your kids. You know, so I'm like, now you can only smoke at home, but all our tourists that are coming here, they're gonna have nowhere to smoke. So are you gonna find them when they're walking around the street? I mean, you're selling them pot and then setting them loose in the city to get fined. It's not very friendly. So you as a business person, bed and breakfast, converting an apartment building into a hotel, starting up a hotel, you have some time to get a jump on everybody else. But trust me, some hotel chain is gonna convert their whole hotel chain into being cannabis friendly, because it's one of the few places in the regulations where people be able to consume cannabis. You know, you'll be able, only innkeepers and hotel owners can have rooms set aside for smokers in their hotel to accommodate tourists coming here. So if you don't have enough money for a hotel, you know, think of a house zoned on a corner lot or a commercial residential that you could open up a bed and breakfast, because the cost of hotels in this city is like ridiculous, like $500 a night or more. I'm like, you would get like guests that would be willing to pay $500 a night or more to stay in your home, and they would also be able to have like breakfast and all sorts of tours and things that you could do for them. It would be awesome. So, I just really want to emphasize that I told Moses I would, oh, you're here. Oh. Okay, so to wrap up. If anybody is thinking of converting their existing business or starting up their own business, come and talk to me. You know, my coffee shop is at Front and Blue Jays Way. Ask for Chris. I'm like, if I'm not there, leave your number, but really, don't miss out on the opportunity you have to get a head start. You heard a lot of licensed producers up here. You could be as big as a licensed producer if you get a start today. In 1 year from now, you could be up on stage telling people about your awesome idea. Please. Thanks,
So, now you know what I like about this guy. He's amazingly energetic.
Oh, I almost threw up coming out here. It was so nerve-wracking.
Surprisingly transparent and really quite fearless, because in his own journey he's had to somewhat skirt the law from time to time.
I tried to skirt that today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Moses. Have a great night.
And